Thank you, Quentin. Dear colleagues, good morning to everyone. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you today on the topic provenance research, recent international developments and future challenges. And I would like to express my sincere thanks to the organizers for inviting me to do so. La provenance pour toute œuvre d'art est un point essentiel. Provenance research for any work of art is an essential point. Today, this sentence is almost a cliché. Its formulation, forever, is far from recent, dating back to 1938 and penned by an author whom I'm sure everyone in this room knows, and Lea has mentioned his name already, Fritz Lucht. Provenance research owes a number of groundbreaking publications to the Dutch art connoisseur and collector Fritz Lucht, who founded the Fondation Custodia in Paris in 1947. First and foremost, in his 1921 book, Les marques de collection et des dessins et des estampes, which remains an indispensable standard reference work on the stamps and other markings that collectors, publishers, and dealers affixed to drawings and prints. The stamps reveal the origin of these works, Lucht writes in his 1921 preface. Drawings and prints without markings are as if abandoned like foundlings. Those with markings are if adorned with titles of nobility. Lucht's four-volume répertoire des catalogues de vente publique intéressant l'art ou la curiosité, published from 1938 to 1987, is also famous. It lists around 100,000 auction catalogues of fine art in chronological order from 1600 to 1925 and includes location information. Right at the beginning of his preface to the first volume of the répertoire, Lucht makes use of the sentence quoted above to underscore the great importance he attaches to the provenance of work of art. La provenance pour toute œuvre d'art est un point essentiel. Fritz Lucht provides only one of many examples demonstrating that provenance research is not a new phenomenon as such. It has, in fact, been part of the spectrum of methods used in art history ever since the latter developed into an independent academic discipline in the second half of the 19th century. This is evidenced, for example, by the first International Congress of Art History, which took place in Vienna in September 1873. It adopted 8 principles to be considered when creating art gallery catalogues, including as number 5, and I quote, notes on the origin and time of acquisition, the price, the previous history of each painting, including proof of restorations carried out, end quote. The standardized cataloging procedure established following this Congress, according to which details of provenance are among the most basic data for each work, still applies in principle today. Provenance research has thus also always been part of curatorial practice in museums. Provenance research investigates the origin and ownership history of cultural assets and objects of all kinds in their respective historical context. It traces the translocations of cultural assets and thus develops object biographies. As cross-epochal, transdisciplinary contextual research, it reveals the complexity of the values attributed to cultural goods in different societies and social constellations, as well as by individuals. It is conducted in connection with the study of private and public collections, and it's a necessary part of the history of museums and institutions. Provenance marks on the objects themselves, e.g. stamps and stickers on the back of paintings, as well as inventories and archives of all kinds serve as sources. Since the late Middle Ages and the early modern period, provenance information has appeared in the inventories of collections and cabinets of curiosities, as well as travelogues. Provenance research is also of great importance for the art market. In addition, it plays an important role in questions of attribution and authenticity of works of art, and is indispensable for the compilation of an artist's complete works. Catalogue raisonné. Traditionally, however, provenance research was practiced rather casually and as an aid to other disciplines. It was practiced without being accorded an independent value, without being particularly reflected upon and differentiated from a methodological point of view, and without being taught at universities. Moreover, the question whether ownership was rightful or wrongful was rarely posed. This was to change after 1998. Historical, non-political provenance research emerged from the shadows of other disciplines and became the focus of social discourse and media interest. It thus became topical and political, acquiring a new significance and relevance overall. In public perception, it merged with the topic of restitution, which tended to obscure the multi-layered dimensions of provenance research. The boom in provenance research and the new importance attached to this discipline are primarily linked to an issue that is also by no means new, but has been high on the political agenda since December 1998, the compensation for the victims of Nazi tyranny. From 30 November to 3 December 1998, the Washington Conference on Holocaust-Era Assets took place. At this conference, Quentin mentioned that already this morning, at this conference, 42 states laid down 11 principles for the return of assets, such as looted art, from the Nazi era, the so-called Washington Principles. Here they are. The Washington Principles. Can you read it, or is it too small? Well, maybe it works a little bit, yeah. I mean, you're familiar with them anyway. The Washington Principles call for the identifying and publicizing of Nazi looted artworks, the opening of archives, the provision of appropriate financial and human resources, the establishment of a central registry, the encouragement of owners or their heirs to register their claims, and the balanced composition of committees that are to assist in the clarification of disputed ownership issues. If the artwork in question is identified as Nazi looted, then a just and fair solution should be found with its rightful owner or his or her heirs. The principles state that such a solution, quote, may vary depending on the facts and circumstances surrounding a specific case, end quote. The solution need not involve restitution. Other forms of amicable agreements with the rightful owners or their heirs are also possible, such as new acquisitions or permanent loans. It's important to note that the Washington Principles represent a voluntary moral and ethical commitment, a soft law, not a legally binding declaration. How have the Washington Principles been implemented in Germany? In 1998, the federal and state government set up the Coordination Center for Lost Cultural Assets, Koordinierungsstelle für Kulturverluste, in Magdeburg. In 2001, the center initiated the Lost Art Database, which contains international reports of both lost and recovered Nazi looted art, as well as such reports on cultural assets that were relocated due to war, Beutekunst. In 2008, the Center for Provenance Research was set up at the Institute for Museum Research at the Berlin State Museums under the oversight of the Prussian Cultural Heritage Foundation. The center was commissioned to allocate state funding, and these funds enabled museums, libraries, and archives to score their holdings for objects possibly stolen by the Nazis. The public seizure of the art collection of Cornelius Gurlitt, which was publicized by the media in November 2013 and received worldwide media coverage, raised public awareness of the dimensions of Nazi art looting and acted as a catalyst for the expansion of provenance research in Germany. This led to the founding of the German Lost Art Foundation, Deutsches Zentrum Kulturverluste, on 1 January 2015, which is based in Magdeburg and also awards funding. The German Lost Art Foundation continues the work of the former Magdeburg Coordination Center and the former Provenance Research Center with a significantly expanded range of tasks. For example, a department dedicated to cultural objects and collections from colonial contexts was established in January 2019. What is crucial then is the following. As a result of the Washington Conference, that is, in response to an external political impulse, provenance research has been conducted since 1998 in many, but by no means all of the countries that signed the Washington Principles. The aim of this provenance research is to identify and, where appropriate, restitute cultural property seized as part of Nazi persecution. What is the state of play worldwide with regard to the implementation of the Washington Principles? Almost exactly a year ago, the World Jewish Restitution Organization and Jewish Claims Conference published a report on this very topic entitled Holocaust-Era Looted Cultural Property, a Current Worldwide Overview, compiled by Leslie A. Fisher and Ruth J. Weinberger. This report covers a total of 47 countries, which includes all the countries that have signed the Washington Principles and or the Theresien Declaration, Theresienstädter Erklärung, of June 2009. The Theresien Declaration reaffirmed the Washington Principles. So on this map, you can see all the countries that have signed the Washington Principles and or the Theresien Declaration. So in Europe, there's only one little white point. I hope you can make it out. What country is it? Well, no, we are not at school. Kosovo. Kosovo, wonderful, yeah. It's Kosovo. It's the only country in Europe which did not sign either one of the two declarations. Now the report. Presents ratings based on whether or not a given country, and you can read it on the slide, has done historical research on the subject, whether through an historical commission or otherwise. This was A. B, does provenance research on its collections. C, has a claims process, whether through a restitution commission or otherwise. D, has made a substantial number of restitutions. Based on the above factors, 7 countries have made major progress in implementing the Washington Conference. That's category 1, major progress. It always happens, huh? 3 countries have made substantial progress in implementing the Washington Conference. That's category 2, substantial progress. 13 countries have made some progress in implementing the Washington Conference. That's category 3, some progress. 24 countries have made little or no progress yet in implementing the Washington Conference principles. That's category 4, little or no progress. Now, let us have a look at a few maps. So here on this map, you can see the 7 countries in the first category, the ones with a major progress. 5 of the countries indicated here, maintain state commissions: Austria, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. The political decision has been taken to set up a commission in Switzerland, and preparations are now underway. Here you can see the 3 countries in the second category: Canada, Israel, Switzerland. Substantial progress. This map shows the 13 countries in the third category, some progress. And this one, the 24 countries in the fourth category, little or no progress. Now, the report shows clearly, very clearly, that there's still a great deal to be done in terms of implementing the Washington Principles. We are planning an independent, large-scale research project on the topic of the implementation of the Washington Principles at the University of Bonn's Research Center for Provenance Research, Art and Cultural Property Law. For some years now, the study of a different context of historical injustice has also contributed significantly to the popularity of provenance research, that of colonialism. The question of how to deal with cultural assets that have found their way into Western collections in the course of colonialism is the subject of heated debate at both the international professional level and in public. One of the triggers was a speech given by the French President Emmanuel Macron in the capital of Burkina Faso on 28 November 2017, in which he announced his intention to create the conditions for the restitution of the artifacts of African cultural heritage to Africa within 5 years. On behalf of President Macron, Felwine Sarr and Bénédicte Savoy, prepared a report on the restitution of the assets of African cultural heritage, which was submitted on 23 November 2018. Here you can see the covers of the French and the German editions. The post-colonial discourse has been ongoing since the late 1970s, and now, with some delay, but with all the more force, this discourse seems to have reached the museums. This has intensified ethnological provenance research, which is sometimes also referred to as post-colonial provenance research. Museums in several countries, including France, Germany, the Netherlands, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Switzerland, have returned cultural objects to the global south, notably the Benin bronzes to Nigeria, what you can see here. Due to time constraints, I won't be able to go into this in detail, and we will move on instead to my concluding questions. What are the challenges for the future? What epistemological dimensions does provenance research yield? And what contribution can it make to the methodological advancement of art history? First of all, there's the question of why we conduct provenance research and what its added value is, beyond the question of rightful or wrongful ownership. We research provenance because we want to understand when, in what way, and under which conditions, for example, a painting came to be in its present location, which collectors and collections it encountered along the way, and which interpretations, inscriptions, and ascriptions it underwent. We also want to know what this in turn has to do with the changing tastes and also market mechanisms, and what identity-forming function objects can have for individuals or communities. There's also the question of how all of this could contribute to a critical history of one's own scientific discipline and institutions. And finally, there's the question of how all of this might lead to the development of approaches or even visions of a future of the museum, of a global art history, of society, of intercultural understanding, and so on. In conclusion, I'd like to put forward a few theses. Provenance research in museums, and not just in art museums, that's important, must be strengthened in order to eliminate existing research deficits. Museums should increasingly make information about provenance part of the way they display their collections and permanent exhibits. They could, for instance, in individual cases, make the reverse side of paintings visible to the public. With regard to the handling of cultural objects from colonial contexts, an international agreement is needed, a kind of Washington 2.0, for the purpose of developing guiding principles. To give a few examples, provenance research can be linked to material culture studies, transcultural and migration research, as well as to research on historical and memory cultures. It will differentiate itself methodically and theoretically, and by doing so, has the potential to contribute to the further methodological development of art history. Provenance research has the potential to become a new paradigm in the humanities and cultural studies. We are at the beginning of a new turn, a provenential turn. And please allow me at the very end to show you the cover of the already mentioned introduction in provenance research, which I published in 2022. I'm sorry it's only in German, but if you are interested in reading something in English or French, I'll be happy to provide a PDF with an essay. Okay, thank you all for your time and attention.